Patty and Peter, welcome.
Thank you.
You from Europe and you from North Carolina, and getting you two together was a bit of a challenge, but we're thrilled that you're here together to discuss basically Steadfast Tin Soldier and maybe a few other things. So, Peter, I gather you were quite interested, and we're all interested, in the Danish influence in Steadfast Tin Soldier and its effect on Balanchine and your view of what he took from your tradition, your wonderful tradition.
I think Mr. B fell in love with Denmark for many reasons. It was the first job he had after Jackie Depp's company.
That's it. People don't always remember that he came in 1930
From
to Denmark.
1930 to 1931, he was ballet master for the Royal Danish Ballet. And he was ballet master on the condition that he staged 3 Folkine ballets.
Really?
And then he could do one of his own ballets. We think it's quite funny today, but it was his first job. And the first ballet he staged for the Royal Danish Ballet was Apollon.
Wow.
And it was danced by a dancer called Leif Ørnberg, which was Peter Martin's uncle, believe it or not. And I think that's when it all started. Then he came to America. He did Apollo for the Christensen brothers. Lou Christensen was the first Apollo in America, which was also Danish. And then, of course, from then on, I think Erik Bruhn was in the company for a short while, the New York City Ballet. And then, of course, his wife got polio on the European tour in 1956 at Copenhagen, and he stayed for 6 months. And I remember watching him rehearsing Serenade. I remember him rehearsing my mother in Serenade.
Mona Vangsal.
Mona
You
Vangsal.
pronounced correctly.
Mona Vangsal.
I,
Yes, and he did his Serenade, Apollo, and Symphony in C. And that was Symphony in C with the old costumes, the white, the red, the green, and the blue. And I remember that as a child too. And then, you know, Danish dancers came and joined the company.
Many Danish dancers in his company, male dancers mostly. But
and of course, Peter was the first one, which in a way happened by incident, because they needed a dancer to do Apollo in Edinburgh. Mm-hmm. And Jacques was injured, and he wanted Henning Kronstam, which he had rehearsed in 1956. And Henning Kronstam had 2 nights earlier broken his Achilles and last little feet. Oh. So there was this young man that had done it a couple of times, called Peter Martins. And I remember when Balanchine called, I wasn't there, but I was told that he only asked, how tall is he? He's 6'2", sent him across. And he came and he danced, and then he became a guest later on. And then I followed, and Adam followed, and Ib followed, and Ulrik followed, and have I forgotten somebody? I did mention Adam, did I? Yes.
Yes, you did.
I mean, there were a few more. Nikolai afterwards, after Balanchine had passed away. So I think that the love for Denmark was from that time he spent there, but also that at that time, of course, our tradition for male dancing was quite strong.
well, I think that's it. He may have loved, you know, Denmark and this and that, but he liked the training of Danish male dancers very much.
You know who he also brought is Stanley Williams.
Of course.
And he
How
brought,
could I forget
that?
that?
And Erik Bruhn also
How could
guessed.
I forget Stanley?
But Stanley, Mr. B brought him here to teach the men, because the men were superb. The training, you know, you had some extra, you know, great dancers. And in America at that time, there weren't as many, and he wanted him. And Stanley was here for years at the School of American Ballet, and the girls loved him too. We all flocked to his class. But the blend of Stanley's teaching and Balanchine were like a beautiful marriage. They would prepare you even for Balanchine Ballet as a musicality. And Stanley worshipped Mr. B. He loved Mr. B. And he wanted to really make the technique of Balanchine, using the feet, and that was all part of Stanley's training. And it was wonderful to be exposed to that. And he came with Peter. You know, when Peter came and guested, Stanley was here with him. He was taking care of Peter, because Peter was like 19 when he did Apollo, and I was there. I saw him come. We were very excited to see him.
I think when I arrived in he had done a piece before, where he's sort of played a bit with it together with a few dancers.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yes.
Jeu d'enfant.
Is that what it was called?
Yeah, I believe
But
so.
I think maybe when I arrived, you know, he certainly, there's another Danish dancer. You know, why don't I do something Danish?
Well, the first Jeu d'enfant was a combination of experiment, I suppose.
was a collaboration,
several different
wasn't it?
choreographers,
Yes. Yeah.
most of whom didn't really last, and the only thing that really did last was, I guess, the pas de deux. I'm not sure about that, but certainly the woman's variation
That's right.
was carried on in the work that you premiered.
So I think that's what he was reminded of Denmark, and I think he felt like doing a Danish piece. And also, when he was there, he couldn't have helped, because every day at 12 o'clock, the king's lifeguards at the moment, the queen's lifeguards, because we have a queen, is changing guards. At 12 o'clock, they march to the city and back again to the garrisons. And that is a costume. They must have inspired him, because the costume is exactly like it. And that's why, you know, once you're Danish, I sort of knew what he was after a little bit. And I knew the Hans Christian Andersen story.
Yes.
Although the ballet is very different. It's a love story. It's a love story between the ballerina and the steadfast tin soldier. It's about not giving up.
Yes,
Yeah?
sure, yeah.
So, you know, it must have reminded him. And then I think he thought, oh, well, it's a good idea to do this for us.
Well, let's talk about the Danish training in mime, which is quite unusual for America. And you were so precise about that today, and very, very detailed.
Well, mime is not in Britain too. It's not just in America. In Britain too, they can't mime. They'll probably not let me into the country tomorrow if I say
what
that.
they know
But
is from the Russian.
they become
school, I think.
pantomime.
Well,
Pantomime and mime is two different
things, of
Because
course.
pantomime is pantomime.
Yeah.
It's telling it, yeah. But the Danish mime are as choreography.
oh,
It's musical. You're not jumping up and down, but you are telling a story. It's not stop and start. In a pantomime, you're talking or you're singing or you're tap dancing,
sure,
and
an
then you do
event.
pantomime.
Yeah.
You're telling a story like Marcel Marceau in France. But in the Danish tradition, it's a part of the ballet. And I think it was because in Denmark, the dancers never stopped.
well, because it was all part of the body movement, wasn't
You
it?
see,
Yes.
you would still be on stage. You know, you would not have, you know, when you stop doing your point work and fouettes and piquets around the stage, you would continue in another role on stage. So the children in the Danish tradition is very important too, like I know it is here. I think Mr. B always brought lots of children on stage on purpose because it's so important. But in Denmark, you basically start when you're 6, 7 years old and you're on stage. I was on stage the first time when I was 7. And you know, you continue until you're carried out the door.
Well, because yes, they have,
Because we have opportunities
and
from
older dancers can also participate in the
Yes.
ballets
Yes,
because it's in their
it's in
training
the
to be a
Bonneville's ballets.
part of the movement,
You perform your whole life
right?
from
Yeah.
child to very mature adult. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So it becomes something very different. You know.
It's so specific in some ways. You were so very specific with Roman about knees together, feet together, weight.
Well, there was more details in what it looked like, But I also try to get him to understand the mime and not to hurry anything. In mime, it's always better to be late.
Okay.
Because everything takes its time, because as an audience, they have to understand what they're seeing. And you have to give them time to understand what they're seeing. If you're holding a heart and you look at the heart, the audience will look at the heart. You know, and all those little details we're told when we are kids.
Yes.
And we grow up with those ballets, and mime becomes a part of it.
Yes, but you showed also in a way how the body posture can lend to the interpretation. I mean, you were so very
you're
specific.
down and you're up, and all that.
That's almost too simplistic, down and up. But how do you do it?
Yeah.
And are your feet completely together? Are they a little bit out? And you were extremely specific.
You have to feel it.
Yeah, but you have to know what you're supposed to be feeling. And you showed that very well today.
You know,
it seemed to me.
If you feel what you're saying, it looks right. You can't fake it.
So let's talk about Balanchine. Did he actually coach you in this role?
Of course. Well, we did it, and he was coaching people when he choreographed. Yeah.
But based on a
And
Danish feeling.
I think
way.
he loved, like you said before, he loved doing the man's role.
Oh, he loved it.
Well, this is great. I would like to talk about that too. But
He loved partnering. He loved doing he particularly loved this. I remember he loved that in the end of it.
and Roman did that so beautifully.
Yeah, he did.
Well, Roman
He
is
did.
in it.
He did.
Roman is into it.
Yeah.
He's immersed in his.
He's a wonderful young dancer.
He's a wonderful dancer, but he
needs
also is
coaching.
in the
He's sensitive.
in the moment
Yeah.
on stage.
Yeah.
It's not everyone is, even if they're
No.
virtuosos. Well, Patty, this is a good segue, somewhat, to talk about how Balanchine coached you.
Well, he showed so beautifully everything he does, and he basically he had certain things that he wanted, like my arm, holding the arms back, or he told, the story about how you get married, you're getting married, and he showed me, and I just tried to copy him as close as I could, because he showed so beautifully. Just a hint of the way he held he showed me how to do this with the head, and he somehow was so into it that it was so obvious what he wanted.
But you said he also liked to, quote, play or demonstrate the man's role.
He did. He would love to show them and go into detail about how to do it, and he'd partner me, and we'd try to, feel. It was such a special, beautiful little treasure of a ballet, because it's very touching, and the musicality, again, was so very musical, and it was really a gift, because we didn't think it would last very long. We thought it was done in Saratoga Springs, and he had done Coppelia the year before, and we premiered that in Saratoga Springs, and they wanted another ballet. I think they commissioned it, or they wanted a new ballet.
I think they did commission it, yeah.
So that's how the premiere was in Saratoga Springs, and he did it so fast. But he's always he knows what he wants to do. He always says, I don't plan it before. But it's always hard to believe it, because he's so lucid in what he shows us. It's right,
well, often he will say something that's been running around in his head for several years. It's not planned exactly, but first of all, the music is often there for a long time before he decides how to use it in something. And who knows exactly when he kind of finalizes it, and of course it depends on what dancers he's working with stuff like that.
But it went really quickly.
Well, I know once he gets there with the live dancers, he has to move. But that's not to say that some of these things weren't floating around up there for quite a while, and we'll never really know, I guess.
I remember I was quite worried when I saw my name up.
Oh.
Well, because in the Hans Christian Andersen story, he only has one leg.
Well, I was going to ask you about that.
And I thought, how is this going to go on? How are we going to choreograph this? Am I going to jump around on one leg? I really thought, and she did think that as well, because, it's in the story.
I know.
You know, there was no more metal when they came to the last soldier, and he only had one leg, but he was steadfast. He wanted the ballerina. I think that was also something maybe he wanted to show about, you know, it's a good moral.
Would you like to talk about any other Balanchine roles you danced? Because you were very well reviewed as Oberon, for instance.
I was just thinking about that coming over on the plane.
Oh, yeah?
I was thinking, did I actually do that? But I remember the steps with the music,
Well.
and it was done for Eddie, of course.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it was
yeah.
really fast and punchy. But I think I only did it twice because we only did Midsummer Night's Dream one time when I was here.
But there's lots of pantomime during it.
Is there?
Well, that has an acting element in it.
When I came, it was difficult for me to first get on stage because Mr. B would always take time with people. He would have to know them before he trusted them on stage. And I really got on stage earlier than I should, replacing somebody.
Oh, that's typical New York City Ballet.
You know,
They throw you in before you're ready.
And then I did a lot of nutcrackers
Right.
because everybody was
true.
off doing concerts. You know, so let's get the new boy dancing. I think I danced with 3 or 4 people, nutcracker.
Yeah.
I think 22 shows out of 40 or something. So, but then the next season, which was the spring season, I danced 22 new ballets, and I learned about 30. So, you know, sometimes you can't actually remember if
Whether
you
you
did
did
that ballet or not,
Of course.
or it was just your, yeah.
But in Denmark, for instance, did you dance Symphony in C?
No.
No?
No.
But you
Because
danced it-
Symphony in C, I saw it as a child.
Yeah.
And then it was paused for a long time. So I never danced Symphony in C, but I did third movement here.
That's what I was getting at. I
Yeah.
knew you did it in New York City Ballet
with
repertoire.
white socks and black shoes.
Yeah.
I remember.
Which you didn't like very much. Oh, my goodness.
No, it wasn't just me. All the boys
none
did
of
not
us.
like
Well,
it, but
we
I
didn't
think
like
they
it
managed to. I think they managed to talk Mr. B into just having black shoes and black socks. In
Right.
The end.
Well, now they do. But
Yeah,
yes, in my day, the guys always wore white socks, or almost always.
But you see, it was for me. It was nothing new because in all Bonneville ballets, you have in those famous ones, you have black tights down to here, then you have white socks, and then you have black shoes
that's right.
with a white point.
That's
So
true.
to make the feet look a bit
Yeah,
better.
yeah.
So it wasn't that strange to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. The black shoes and the white socks
Yeah.
element.
Well, it wasn't.
It
When
did-
I first saw it, it wasn't strange because that was sort of the male costume in many ballets
Of course.
Exactly.
in the 50s.
Yeah.
Let's say. So, well, Patty, how did you feel doing this ballet?
Oh, I loved every minute of it.
I mean,
I
because-
thought it was so charming.
Well, the thing of it
was
is, you
fun.
have. It's interesting. You did. I went to SAB as you did, and so on. We didn't have lessons in mime or anything like that. And for Steadfast, for Coppelia,
Why?
you had that. You had assimilated that somehow out of.
No, well, Madame Janilova worked on a lot with me, and when I did Coppelia, she staged the first 2 acts, and Mr. Balanchine did the 3rd act. But their 2nd act there was a lot of pantomime in it, and she
Right.
told me exactly. She was my teacher, and I learned so much, and she was very generous in sharing.
But
with
that's
me.
not part of SAB training. That's
no,
the point.
it's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
But it's interesting to know that you assimilated it so
Yeah.
amazingly.
Well, when you have a great teacher in front of you like Mr. B, and you're sensitive to
Sure.
it,
And you can
it's
take
a
what
great
they
joy.
give you.
It wasn't easy because I had never done it.
Yeah.
It took a lot
I don't believe
to
you.
work. Yeah.
I don't believe you.
Oh, come on.
Because she was such a great dancer.
Well,
Well,
I know
thank
that.
And it's not only about when you danced with your whole body. Am I right? You didn't just dance with your legs and arms. You danced with your
No,
heart.
with my
You
heart.
danced with
I
the
did.
brain,
Thank you,
the
thank
heart,
you.
and whatever. So for a great dancer to learn mime, it's
No, I
in
know.
your heart already.
But
But it's so wonderful when you learn
know.
it
She
because
also
it
is-
makes sense. And what you said about, it has to be slower to show. I learned that you can't just do here me. Though, if
Yeah.
you say the words, that you're thinking with your body, looking at your partner, and but Balanchine, he was so amazing showing it. And I said, Mr. B, thank you. I feel like I'm 12 years old. He laughed. I feel like it's such a joy to do something that's so, young and it's very touching. And I always loved the pas de deux. It was so wonderful to do.
Yeah,
the
well,
pas
they
de
were
deux.
wonderful technically as
And,
well as emotionally, kind of. But you always had an intuition for the stage.
Well,
At a very,
no,
from
I
the
just-
very first.
It's
I
called
love-
greatness.
Well,
Oh,
I,
thank
It's
you.
called
Oh, my
greatness.
goodness.
Don't be afraid of saying the
I'm
word.
not. I practically grew up
Well,
with her.
thank
It's
you, my
because she's a
goodness.
great
Oh, my
I
dancer.
saw her
goodness.
from 17, and I know she
Oh,
was
my-
born for it.
No.
Yes, yes, yes.
Oh,
But anyway,
Well, thank you. That means a lot to me. It's so sweet. But watching Mr. B and seeing how he he did it, he'd offer his hand, and because I remember once I was walking down the street with Jean-Pierre, and he was behind us, and he came up
came
and
on
he said, you can't, you can't hold a girl around the way. He knew how you put your arm, and you take, and the manners of a gentleman.
Yeah.
And it was always the manners of how the man acts and how the woman reacts to the man. Taking a beautiful hand and just not grabbing them. He always was saying you have to use the hands, like you offer and you give a beautiful arm.
Today with them.
Yeah.
Because
I
it was. I remember when in
used to
Europe,
go like this.
when we were doing pas de deux,
Oh, yes.
it was
It's
like
tough.
that.
It's like-
But here it was that.
fingers. Yes.
And we didn't
Yeah,
teach them
right.
that today.
We
should have.
didn't have time.
No.
We'll grab them
Because it was
another
always
time.
it was always no grabbing.
Right. No,
Yeah.
I know.
He
I
was
know.
very strict, not strict, but he said, no, we don't do it. And you have to offer the hand, and then the woman, she lifts it, the
hand.
hands have to be beautiful. Although some of this is like, because it's part doll, you can do that.
Well, sure.
But
How do you
All the
compare, or do
same.
you compare that doll and the Coppelia doll?
oh, that's right, because in Coppelia, Madame Danilova showed me exactly what she wanted. And I tried to do exactly how it was very stylized and very, you were the doll and you weren't allowed to act like a woman.
Yes.
So you had to play the role of a doll, and it was very stiff. And so I had that, and I also had the freedom in Coppelia in the first act, where you were
Well, it's
Swanhilda,
two
all
different
that.
things. Obviously,
Yeah,
this little
but the
10-minute
doll,
ballet. And
when we did the doll, I thought I don't want, because Mr. V didn't really say, he said, oh, just go back there and stand and wait, because while he's dancing, the curtain goes up and we're both on the stage. So I just did this because I didn't want to do that. And I was just waiting, watching Peter dance. And so it became this, but in this piece, the whole dance wasn't stiff, because she showed me the very fluid.
that was
more
what interesting to
freedom.
come out
There's-
today. I think we kind of think it was this way in a way, briefly.
Well, it's a little this way, and some of it is like that, the style.
But there
It
was
a
some
little of
arm
the doll,
movements that were very fluid.
but it was very human and beautiful. And like he said, Ulanova, there's a port bra like this, and you look, and you go down. But he showed all the freedom of it. So he showed me what he wanted, and I just did it.
Yeah.
We
You're
always
very good
try
at just
to
doing
do it.
Yes. Okay. Well, we've talked wonderfully about this ballet, and is there anything else that you would like to add about Bournonville, Balanchine, being here?
It's wonderful to see you after so many years.
Yeah.
How many years it's when you left the company? It was great.
1977.
It's fabulous.
You haven't been here since 77?
Oh, I've been here.
Oh.
Yeah,
It's
but
almost
I
like
left the company
40
in
some odd
1977.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me just say then, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and as
Thank you.
always with these video shoots we do, you see so much more in a Balanchine ballet than you might even have glimpsed on stage. And the level of detail here I thought was just fascinating and heartwarming and a wonderful experience.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was fun.